Today on the Big 3 in 30, the Titans give Jeffery Simmons $105 million.
A historic contract for Jeffery Simmons.
What are the expectations for Fernando Mendoza in his rookie season?
Break down the Raiders, players, coaches, whatever the case may be.
And is a breakout year coming for Jaxson Dart in New York?
Jaxson Dart is taking center stage, if you will.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NFL, the three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NFL starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here. Let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. Jeffery Simmons is staying in Tennessee with the Titans after landing a massive new deal. Tyler Rowland with Locked On Titans lays out what it means after giving him a $105 million payday.
A historic contract for Jeffery Simmons. He gets 3 years, $105 million on an extension, $35 million per year on average, makes it the biggest defensive tackle contract in NFL history. Jeffery Simmons 100% deserved this extension. He had 2 years left on his contract, but no guaranteed money remaining. In the NFL world, that's just not something that a player of Jeffery Simmons' caliber is going to tolerate. And luckily, it wasn't a question of tolerance or not, because the Tennessee Titans got this thing done in the perfect timing. So Simmons doesn't have to hold out of training camp, doesn't have to miss any practices then. And again, that's why I'm glad that this is out of the way, because it just eliminates any distractions, any drama, any problems. We'll talk about why that is part of the larger idea of what I want the Tennessee Titans summer break to be about. But to have this happen on the final day of the last week before that summer break kicks off, it just feels like the culmination of an entire offseason of great stuff for the Titans. We get the coaching change that we're excited about. We get the new jerseys. We get the player additions in free agency and in the draft that we're excited about. Very good mandatory minicamp, very good organized team activities with good attendance and no injuries and no drama. And we're just talking about football. And this is another thing that adds on to that. Again, a historic deal for Jeffery Simmons that was 100% earned, right? Jeffery Simmons sets his personal best last year, 11 sacks, goes over that coveted double-digit sack mark for an interior defensive lineman, and Simmons fulfilled the prophecy. He truly has become the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL. I remember when he first really broke onto the scene in 2020, 2021, had those back-to-back, or 2021, 2022, had those back-to-back all second team all pro seasons where he really established himself as a top 5 player at the position. But Aaron Donald was still around, Chris Jones more in his prime. We were like, all right, Simmons is in the conversation, but he's definitely not ahead of those two guys. As we stand here today, he is finally truly in that number one position that we thought that he could ascend to. It took a little bit of time. He had to grow up, right? He matured his body. I forget who it was. Somebody posted a picture of Jeffery Simmons in his first press conference, and then this last one that he did on Wednesday at mandatory minicamp. And it's just like what he's done to make over his body. I've talked about his maturity level with some of the interviews he's done throughout this offseason, how he carries himself now. Remember, there were big-time risks about Jeffery Simmons. He was a top 5 talent in the NFL draft, but he had the incident, the violence incident. He had the ACL during training for the draft. Like, Jeffery Simmons was a big-time risk. And, a lot of players, when they get drafted, when there's risk on them, they say, oh, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to prove you right. The owner took a chance on me. Thank you so much. And Jeffery Simmons has truly done that tenfold. On the field, off the field, he's the best player that we could ask for on the field. He has turned into the best version of Jeffery Simmons. Not only that, but he is a consummate professional and a leader in the locker room. He's the face of the franchise, with Cam Ward hopefully taking that over. But Simmons has been the face of the franchise since Derrick Henry left. Like, it's no question about it. And he is the best player on the team, with no doubts, no questions. Again, the best defensive tackle in the entire NFL. And I think he's going to go to another level this year in this attacking defense that we talked about on Friday's episode, where I said Jeffery Simmons ain't leaving, and we went over his quotes. That's still a great listen, even now, knowing that the contract is done. But again, a historic deal that was totally earned for Jeffery Simmons. I'm glad this finally got done. But again, one thing that I think stands out to me is, although it's a historic contract for Jeffery Simmons, this is an absolute steal for the Tennessee Titans when you compare it to other defensive players in the NFL. Big Jeff gets a historic deal, $35 million per year, making him the highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history. Again, completely earned for Jeffery Simmons. Happy to get it out of the way, but an absolute steal for the Tennessee Titans. Before I tell you why, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. Again, it's your team every day. Speaking of every day, if you want to be a true Locked On Titans every dayer, you got to join the Locked On Titans every dayer club. Hit the link down below in the description. You're going to get commercial-free versions of the podcast in your favorite podcast app. That's worth the price of admission alone right there. You're going to get added to a Locked On Titans group chat with me and a bunch of other everydayers where I'm giving you my immediate reaction to all the big news before I even go live, getting mailbag questions, chatting it up with you guys about everything Titans. Hit the link down below. Join the Locked On Titans everydayer club now. But with that being said, again, this is an absolute steal. You start to look at some of the biggest contracts in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball. And you could argue maybe that some of these players are better than Jeffery Simmons. I mean, would you rather have Will Anderson, Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, Myles Garrett than Jeffery Simmons? What about TJ Watt, Danielle Hunter, Max Crosby, Nick Bosa? What about someone like that? See, for me personally, with where we're at right now, Nick Bosa's injuries concerns, I'd rather have Jeffery Simmons. Bosa's at $34 million per year. So Simmons just got $1 more million per year on average than Nick Bosa, and I think that's fair. Max Crosby, that would be a close one. Max Crosby's a very good player. Crosby's getting $35.5 million. I think that's completely fair. Danielle Hunter, excellent player. I'd rather have Jeffery Simmons, and Danielle Hunter's getting $41 million per year for TJ Watt. I know that TJ Watt is a household name, so this would sound like a hot take, but I would rather have Jeffery Simmons than TJ Watt right now. I think TJ Watt is still a good player, but he's not a top 5 defensive player in the entire NFL anymore, in my opinion. Myles Garrett, I'd rather have Myles Garrett. Aiden Hutchinson, $45 million a year for Aiden Hutchinson. He's a good player, maybe a touch overrated, in my opinion. I still think he's good, but I'd rather have Jeffery Simmons than Aiden Hutchinson. Now, Hutchinson's 25 years old, and Jeffery Simmons is 29. So that's why he's getting more money. Micah Parsons, even coming off the ACL, still give me Micah Parsons. Will Anderson, yeah, okay, you got me. 24-year-old Will Anderson. I'm taking that over 29-year-old Jeffery Simmons. But the point is, Big Jeff is right around Sauce Gardner, Trent McDuffie, Chris Jones, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby. $5 million less than Danielle Hunter. Like, if you stack up the best defensive players in the NFL, Simmons isn't more than 4, 5, 6. Like, and they're getting him at, 8, 9, 10 in terms of average per year. That's a steal for the Titans. I know Simmons is an older player, but defensive tackles and interior defensive linemen, offensive linemen tend to age gracefully in the NFL because it's not all about explosion and being out in space. You're in a phone booth. Technique, power, strength, understanding, leverage, those things can last. And it's not like Jeffery Simmons. I mean, Jeffery Simmons is a freak explosive athlete, but it's not like he's one of these twitched up edge rushers who's going to fall apart when he turns 30 and not have the burst to get it done anymore. That's not going to be the case. Jeffery Simmons is going to be able to overpower people and win with his technique in his hands on the interior for 5, 6 more years, I believe. So to get Simmons at this number, to get this done now, get it out of the way, and continue what I am calling the summer of boring for the Tennessee Titans. I want it to be the summer of boring. No drama, no news, no concerns, no injuries, nothing. Just quiet, peaceful work. Honestly, that's all we can hope for in any of our lives. Just quiet, peaceful work. It's what it's all about. But that's what I'm saying, and this is a great start towards that. Simmons getting a record deal. Vibes are high. in the locker room. Everybody's happy. It's a good moment. People are celebrating. The picture the Titans posted, their social media team, with Jeff in the Boss Hog outfit like Taylor did back in the day with his big blue Titans blue truck. It just, the vibes are immaculate around the team right now. And if we can keep that, we don't need to make the momentum move forward. We don't got to, pull the rope more towards us and gain ground. If the Titans can just hold throughout the summer, just be in this holding pattern, we're going to be great, being quiet and boring, and then kicking off training camp healthy and hungry. So glad this got done. What a great Friday in America. The U.S. Open is going, USA soccer team, Big Jeff gets his extension. I mean, what three things could be more elite than that on a Friday in America in the summer? I mean, come on, man. But
the biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals mean more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. That's what I love about these tournaments. You can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it. And now you get to benefit from each goal scored. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com now to get started. Welcome back to the Big 3-30 NFL. Fernando Mendoza is settling into the NFL as the Raiders shape expectations for his rookie year. Your boy Q with Locked On Raiders talks it through.
Dave Bartu, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this is a guy that I've known for a very long time. Used to talk college football with him all the time, and we've been really working on this connection since I've been in Las Vegas to try to get him on the show to break down NFL, break down the Raiders, players, coaches, whatever the case may be, from an analytical point of view. I am not the analytical guy, but I understand how important it is and what it really means and how many do rely so heavily on analytics. So I definitely respect it. It's just not my bag. It's not what I do, but I know that a lot of people love to hear from an analytical side of things. So we were able to catch up on Friday. We probably had a good 25, almost 30-minute conversation on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Radio Nation Radio 920. Obviously, I'm not going to bring you that whole thing. I'll probably break it down in the next few days when it comes to different rookies that he talked about. But I want to start out with the number one overall pick, obviously, Fernando Mendoza. So here it is, that conversation I had with Dave Bartu from MatrixEdgeAI.com, talking all things Fernando Mendoza and talking about his peer group, where he has him ranked, and his realistic expectations for his rookie year. Check it out.
So my data, I just went back to 2012. So we got a little more than a decade worth of picks. Now, his peer group is the top half of the first round, picks 1 through 16. Now, I think you and I would agree that pick number 1 of 1 is a little special, maybe even a little bit more expected out of him. But I am comparing him. His expectations are benchmarked to two groups. His pick group, so that 1 through 16, that's 36 quarterbacks in the last 13 years. But then also his overall group, all quarterbacks, because there's guys taken in the late first, early second, late second. Every once in a while, there's that guy that really hits it big his rookie year. But I think you and I agree, for the most part, they're all coming from those first 16 picks. So with Mendoza, when we get into it, is we look at his peer group, the average number of games played for his peer group, 36 quarterbacks drafted since 2012. Average number of game played is 13.5. Now, keep in mind, folks, you too, Q, that we got a 17-game schedule now. Most of the time, it was 16. So really 13.5, what we're expecting out of Fernando is, well, it's like any of these guys. Let's stay healthy, right? Hold our breath on everybody, right? Violent sport. So we're looking at 13.5. I'd say 14.5 games he's in. And then starts. Average for his peer group is 13.
Okay.
So That to me is kind of the line in the sand. If he's under that, I don't think we would just go, oh, this is a bust, right? It's probably some health issues. You do have Kirk Cousins, who is more than capable. I think the question is, when does Fernando going to come in? If he doesn't get into the game, then I think maybe the question is, why did we take him number one if we're not putting him in there to see what he got, right?
Yeah.
His peer group's averaging 13 starts, 36 guys over the last 13 years. The average is 13 starts. I do not prescribe to let him sit on the bench and learn. He has taken more snaps than just about anybody in college football the last 4 years. He's learned. He either can carry the bags on Sunday or he cannot. I don't care when he goes in there. I don't buy this whole let him sit and learn crap. If he's good enough to be one-of-one, make him play.
I'm glad that you said it in the way that you pointed it out, because that's been part of the conversation we've had here. You know, we've heard the conversation of Kirk Cousins will be there, and then eventually at some point they'll slide in, Fernando Mendoza and give him time to grow. But you're basically saying, hey, man, he's already where he needs to be. So maybe a couple games, but no more than 3 or 4 games on the bench.
Yeah, man, I don't buy this coach him up crap. I don't, right? I mean, Fernando, all these great quarterbacks have learned to carry their teams. Look, you look at almost all the great NFL quarterbacks. They carried their team on Saturday. You can't carry it on Saturday. You're not carrying it on Sunday, which is why the hell I don't know why the Rams drafted Simpson, because he didn't carry nothing for 12 Saturdays. Worst quarterback in the last 15 years. Well, how is he going to carry the bags on Sunday if he can't do it on Saturday? He's got no experience. But with Fernando, I say put him in. And look at these numbers. What did I say? His average peer group starts 13 games. So I'll put the over-under on him being a starter by game number 4, and he starts the rest of the season.
I'm looking at some of these projections when it comes to passing yards and passing touchdowns. How are you breaking this down? What's the math problem that goes into that?
Oh, okay. So when I fed all of this in, now all my NFL stuff, I oversee all the data, and I use 3 different AIs because AI lies. It lies all the time. You got to check it against itself, and it lies to each other. You got to do weeks of work. The first answer is always wrong. But what I've done is I've taken the data. Now I'm looking at Fernando Mendoza. See, one of the things that I do is I have been grading offensive and defensive coordinators. In fact, every coaching position in the NFL since 2010. So when I look at Fernando Mendoza, I look at him through the eyeballs of what has his offensive play caller done for his career, and I look up at the matchup of every defensive coordinator he's going against, because there's some games where he has a higher odds of throwing for 300 yards. There are some games on the road or at home against certain defensive coordinators, he has a better odds of throwing an interception, throwing a touchdown. So when I'm looking at these numbers, I'm not just throwing a dart. It is actually projecting exactly how many yards a guy is going to have. But with these, like I said, I'm just taking all the rookie numbers and aggregating them, which is a separate thing altogether. So we start talking about yards, right? Yeah. And in his draft class, in his peer group, the average guy, those 13 starts get you 2,871 yards. Now I'm looking over here at the other screen of my computer, and some genius says that look at the over under on his total yards. Plus 3,000 is a plus 135, right? And I'm saying the average in his class is 2817. That is just under 50-50 on 3,000 yards. But then his next one is over 3,500 yards, plus 275. Well, if you look at the top 10 quarterbacks drafted in the last 13 years, top 10, their average is 37.91. So for you to bet over 3,500 yards for Mendoza and hit the over at plus 275, he is averaging nearly a top 10 total yards passing for quarterbacks in the last 13 years. So for me, the line in the sand, I'd love to see him average for his group. 36 guys, if he gets above 28, somewhere between 28 and 2,900 yards, if he exceeds 3,000, I think he's done a great job for his rookie year.
Overall, when you look at these numbers, when you look at Fernando, all the experience that he had in college, how good do you feel about that pick for the Raiders moving forward, knowing he's going to be the guy?
I look at quarterbacks really differently when I'm evaluating them. I have something called quarterback effect, right? Carrying the bags on Saturday. How much did you elevate the team? And so with Mendoza, he elevated Cal. Now people go, well, Cal just went 500. Cal sucked before him, right? They were way worse than that. He elevated them. He elevated Indiana. He has a ton of snaps. I mean, there's almost no quarterbacks not named Cam Newton that have started less than 24 games that were any good in the NFL. Okay, so he's got the starts. That's why I say put him in there. My only hesitation with him, I do think he was the best value at quarterback in the draft. My only hesitation is his offensive coordinator at Indiana is named Mike Shanahan. And that guy has been good with everybody he's been given. Everybody, right? So people always say system offensive coordinator. No, I just say a good one.
Right.
Great NFL quarterbacks usually don't come from great college coordinators because they mask issues. But given where he's been, the talent around him, what he's been able to elevate, I think he was the best risk at quarterback on the board at the time.
So I thought that was some really good stuff, especially when it gets to the point of, man, the dude was carrying the bags on Saturday. Let him carry them on Sunday. And, we've had so much conversation about when Fernando's going to play, why he should wait. Is it going to be all the way to week 14? And Dave's like, hey, man, 13 and a half. 13 and a half starts is the numbers that I'm looking at, right? So that doesn't mean that he's going to miss too many games, right? A lot of people that have said, hey, I want to see him early and often. If it goes the way that Dave is projecting, that's what you're going to see. And it's not like he just threw it out there, threw it against the wall, and was hoping it sticks, right? I mean, he's giving you the reasoning behind it. That's why I can really appreciate Dave's, the way he breaks them all down, because he has the evidence, he has the numbers, he has the reasoning behind what he's saying. So I thought that was some really good stuff. I can appreciate that line, and I'm going to start using it more often than not. If he carries the bags on Sunday, he could probably carry the bag on Saturday. He can carry the bag on Sunday. And you mentioned Ty Simpson. That's why I can't understand why Ty Simpson was drafted number 13. He didn't carry any bags, right? Those are his words, not mine. So I could appreciate that, and I think it helps put it into perspective. Just kind of how you break down and analyze some of these guys. So like I said, I'll bring some more coming up on tomorrow's show. Of course, I got vacation coming up around the corner, so we'll have some best of shows as well. But I definitely want you to be able to hear about a few of the rookies that Dave was breaking down. But yeah, Dave Bartu, really good stuff, talking all things Fernando Mendoza.
Workplace chaos can show up fast. The problem is that finding the right candidate can take a lot more time than most businesses can afford. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team. Some of the best moves organizations make aren't always the splashiest ones. Sometimes it's finding the person who fits exactly what the team needs at the right moment. That's what stood out to me here, and it's the same idea behind Indeed Sponsored Jobs, helping connect organizations with candidates who are the right fit from the start. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your premium status you deserve at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Welcome back to the Big 3 in 30 NFL. Jaxson Dart is entering a big year 2 with breakout expectations around the Giants. Patricia Traina with Locked On Giants gets into it.
Jaxson Dart is taking center stage, if you will. We just got through talking about his first year, kind of a little recap, some numbers, a little insight into where he had his strengths and where he had his weaknesses. So what are the next steps for Jaxson Dart? This offensive system that is being implemented by offensive coordinator Matt Nagy, totally different than what the Giants ran last year. Some of the biggest differences include more work under center. Now, the difference with working under center as opposed to the shotgun, it's quite a big difference. All right. Number one, little different footwork, right? Whereas you're already 5 to 7 yards deep in the shotgun. Now you've got to drop back, and you've got to make sure that your footwork is just right. Because if you take too big of a stride or not a big enough stride, now you've got to kind of develop a feel like of, okay, 5 steps, 7 drops, just get it right. The other thing is when you're lined up under center, your vision of the defense is a little different as opposed to when you're standing 5 to 7 yards back and you can see a lot more. You can kind of see a bigger picture. Whereas when you're right on top of the defense, maybe now you can't see the defensive line as clearly. Maybe you can't see the linebackers and whatnot. So that's your field vision changes a little bit. So that takes a little getting used to. He's going to have to turn his back temporarily when he drops back. He's not going to be able to straightforward backpedal. It's going to be he's going to turn, which means part of his back is going to be to the defense. And now it's a matter of, okay, turning around and being able to pick up what he took his eye off of. Whereas when he's in the shotgun, now he can see everything unfold while he's dropping back. So that's going to be an adjustment. So all of that is a big adjustment for a guy who primarily worked out of the shotgun basically most of his career to now a guy who has to work under center. And that is going to be part of the game. You can't be a quarterback in this league and strictly work out of shotgun. It just, the better quarterbacks can do both. And that's where they want to take Jaxson Dart, his game to the next level. All right. Now, Jaxson Dart, when we spoke to him about this new offense, he mentioned some additional things that he's going to be asked to do. He mentioned that there's going to be a lot more responsibility put on his shoulders, such as kills and alerts. Right. So for kills and alerts, basically that's killing a play off if you don't like the look that you see, or just, changing stuff as need be. Pre-snap recognition is going to be key for him. So he's going to have to just be on his P's and Q's with pre-snap recognition. When you have that type of system, sometimes RPOs, especially if you're working under center, sometimes RPOs can be a little tricky to pull off. New York, for what it's worth, they ran 54 RPOs last year, which was 13th most according to Pro Football Reference. I think they'll still run RPOs. I just don't know if they will run them as high as they did in his first year. It's certainly something he can do, and you don't want to take away the element of his legs, but you have now a power run game. You want to let the running backs do the majority of the heavy lifting. You do not want your quarterback to be up there leading the team in rushing, which I don't think he was last year, but he had quite a few runs and maybe a little bit more in terms of rushing yards that maybe he should have had. And I know some of you are going to say, well, when John Harbaugh was in Baltimore, Lamar Jackson did a lot of running. Totally different kind of situation here, guys. Different quarterbacks and different skill sets. So I think the Giants, that all the talk about in the offseason about the Giants wanting to have a power run game, I think that was part of the reason why. Because look, if you have a power run game, now you can set up play action, which again, the Giants really didn't do a whole lot of last year. They only ran 94 play action plays, which was the 4th fewest in the NFL last season. So I think you'll see a little bit more play action. You'll definitely see, like I said, more snaps under center. So I'm interested to see what the breakdown is going to be for Jaxson Dart on that. And recognition is going to be key for him. Okay, the other thing that the Giants have done, and I've talked about this before on the show, I'll mention it again, they have gotten him taller receiving targets. Right? So that is actually going to help him with some of the accuracy issues that he had last year. So basically, if you have a guy who's taller and has a bigger catch radius, now you can put the ball somewhere in their area code, and chances are they're going to come down with it. So, you look at guys like Isaiah Likely and Malachi Fields. These are guys that have wide catch radiuses, and I think that's going to help Jaxson Dart in terms of his accuracy. All right, so let's look at some numbers. Last year, Jaxson Dart had a 59.2% overall reception rate by receivers who were 6'2" or taller. The average air yards per target on those guys, 9.64. Now, for those who are under 6'2", Dart had a 68.4 reception rate, but those guys generally didn't go deep for him. They had an average air yards per target of 7.63. So last year, the Giants kept a lot of Jaxson Dart's passes in that short to intermediate range. This year, they've got taller guys who have speed. They're going to try, I think, not every game. I mean, it's not going to be like every pass attempt, but I think you're going to see a lot more in terms of the deep ball. And again, the hope is that with the taller receivers, that Jaxson Dart can hit a few of these guys in stride and pick up more of the chunk plays, because the Giants really weren't that good in the chunk plays. Now, the taller receivers are also, I think, going to help in the red zone. The Giants just weren't very good in the red zone passing game last year, so that should help, as will contested catches. You have two guys in Isaiah Likely and Malachi Fields, as well as a few other guys who are contested catch specialists. So that, I think, is going to help Jaxson Dart, the passing game, particularly when they get into the red zone, which those of you who are everydayers, you know I used to call that the dead zone for the Giants, because they had no problems going from 20 to 20. But once they got inside the 20, that's when everything kind of died down a little bit. And not all of that was a result of the receivers or the passing game. Some of that was self-inflicted wounds. Some of that was just play calling. So I firmly believe that all of that is going to be cleaned up, and the red zone offense this year is going to be a lot more efficient than it was last year, because last year just was not very good at all.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 NFL. If you follow basketball or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and on campus going up every week, just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 College, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 NFL.